I just wanted to ask really quickly, about the fact that Biden had mentioned that food shortages would become a reality. Do you think that that's likely? Do you think it'll be significant? And how extensive would that be? And secondarily to that, do you think that the domestic effects of this in the United States will lead to some sort of widespread protest? I mean, how much more can the US public take before reaching a breaking point with these higher gas prices, higher food prices, on top of the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, that's quite a mouthful there, Elizabeth. Let me try to at least deal with some of it. I'm very leery of the attempt too closely to link the inflation here in the United States to Ukraine. All that the Ukraine is doing is maybe making it worse, making it last a little longer. But everyone needs to remember that the inflation was well underway before February 24th, when Russia moved into Ukraine. So it cannot be, although it is already being blamed in some sense, it allows a connection to be made that somehow the domestic inflation is Russia's fault, along with everything else that is attributed to Russia. We have an economy that is in very deep trouble. Mr. Biden, as the presiding president, has to keep saying it's really okay. This is silly. You know, Trump, when he was running against the Democrats for president, said that their claims the economy was great were all bogus. As soon as he became president, the Democrats accused him of being bogus about his celebration. They were right again, just as he had been right before. And now we have to play that role against Mr. Biden. And the Republicans, no doubt, will do that as well. But that's very superficial. That doesn't get at anything. We have an economy that is extraordinary from the point of view of both classes, the employer class on the one hand and the employee class on the other. For the employees, I mean, think about it. The years 2020 and 2021 could be argued as among the worst for the working class in American history. They suffered two catastrophes: a public health disaster as big or bigger than any in American history, and the arguably second worst economic collapse. A little statistic: more than 80 million Americans had unemployment for some part of the last 2 years, some for only a couple of weeks, some for the whole period. But that's more than half the working class. That's more than half the labor force of this country. That means everybody, 50% of our working class, experienced unemployment. And it's spectacular what was done to these people across 2 years. And then, as they think, and we don't even know if it's true yet, that they're emerging from the pandemic and all of that, they get slapped across the face with an inflation running now officially at 8% and likely at least 2 or 3% worse than that if you take into account how the numbers are calculated and so on. This is an extraordinary level of pain to inflict on a working class. And you know it because just this week, the release of the findings of the University of Michigan Survey of Consumers indicates, for example, 32% of Americans think right now that their economic future is worse than the condition they're in today. That's the worst number in that survey since it started in the 1940s. We've seen a catastrophic experience while the president, who slips and says regime change is on the agenda, tells us about a robust economic recovery. I mean, it's not me that's questioning it. Those surveys of the University of Michigan indicate that the American people must believe that Mr. Biden is off his rocker with this kind of talk. What in the world is he talking about? So when the American people, being squeezed, watch huge sums of money shipped off to the Ukraine. And with all due respect, Americans are feeling for the pain and the suffering of the people going through war. I understand that. My family has gone through war. I know that real well. But they're going, as they think about it, to wonder about billions over there, and we don't have what here in terms of our situation. It is an extraordinary time. Now, the fuel price increase. I don't know what's going to happen to that. Even a peace deal depends on a lot of detail. Are the sanctions going to be reduced? Are they not? Are they going to be reduced quickly, if at all? What in the world is going on? A lot of that we can't know, even from the headline that Joe just read. I mean, we just don't know enough. And if in the absence of that, and given what was happening anywhere, once an inflation like this gets built in, once every employer sees this as a rising level of costs, he wants to get ahead of it by raising his prices. This gets built in. That's already happening. We're facing an inflation that is going to take the lower half of the American people into levels of economic contrition and difficulty that we can't predict the political outcome. At this point, it'll work to the advantage, as I see it, of the Republicans in the election, because the Democrats have literally painted themselves into a corner. And if Mr. Biden can't be sitting up on the big horse going to war with all the drama that those guys can do, if that rug has been pulled out from under him by the Russian foreign ministry or whatever deals have been made here, I don't know what the guy's going to run on. He's looking like a disaster on a scale that frightens me mostly about where it takes American politics.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, well, I think the implication of what Rick says is that President Biden has indeed got a regime change. But the regime change is in the United States itself. When Biden said last week, well, America's got to make a lot of great sacrifices to support the Nazis in Ukraine, to support the ISIS that are fighting there. If we're going to support ISIS and the Nazis in their fight against civilization, you've got to make sacrifices. But who's the we? The sacrifices that the public is making, as Rick has explained, are a great benefit to, there's another side of the balance sheet. The sacrifices he's talking about are huge, huge profits for the oil companies. Look at the stock market, soaring for the oil companies. Look at the Raytheon and the military-industrial complex and Boeing, soaring prices, and what he describes as a disaster for the American consumers that are squeezed is a bonanza for centralized capital. Last night on the news and here in New York City, they had a listing by boroughs of the evictions that are taking place. There's if you can't meet your basic budget of covering your fuel costs, your utility costs, your food costs, you're going to be behind in your payments, and a lot of people are going to lose their homes. Either they're renters or even owners. There is a huge agglomeration of private capital companies waiting to come in and pick up all of this real estate and turn America away from an owner-occupied economy into a rental economy, a landlord economy. Biden really may succeed in rolling back the economy to the mid-19th century. That basically is not just Biden, of course, it's the people around him. And ultimately, it's the deep state. Whether you're a Republican or the Democrats, their policy is identical. They have the same campaign contributors, and I'm sure Rick agrees with that. All that voters can do is keep throwing the rascals out of power, but they're the same rascals, basically. So the United States doesn't seem to have much of an opportunity to have a real alternative. And you'd mentioned the absence of an anti-war demonstration. There isn't any anti-war demonstration here or in Europe. In Europe, the only anti-war demonstrations are the nationalist right wing. The whole left wing in Europe has been so corrupted by CIA meddling in the National Endowment for Democracy, basically turning the Labour parties into Tony Blair, the Blairism, and social democracy into neoliberalism, that the only protest you're getting is not from the left at all, which I think, as you said earlier, is pretty much evaporating, but it's from the right. So the hope for the change is going to be the model that you're having basically in China and Central Asia, finally saying we are not going to let American finance dictate how our society develops. We're going to develop our society for the population as a whole. So Western democracy has not been very successful in creating this prosperity. It looks like you need a government strong enough to check financial power and strong enough to check the power of the 1%. And that's not being done under Western democracy.